Yeah, so SuDS and ODIs. So ODIs, as mentioned, outcome delivery incentives. So what I'll do is I'll try and just explain how we developed an ODI related to SuDS, and then how that's driving change within the business. So in order to do this, I need to take you back to 2010, 2011, 2012, and a bit of work we did called Discover, Discuss, Decide. So this was our engagement with our customers at the price review at PR14 to understand, for every pound of our customers' money we have, how would we spend that money? Would you spend it all on flood risk, or would you put a bit towards the environment, a bit towards water resources, or whatever it might be? So this was a huge, huge piece of work, huge consultation with a very, very large number of our customers. So in particular, one of the figures to focus on, in the middle at the top, over 7,000 customers involved in our willingness to pay work. So, and through that, that's really asking our customers directly, if you're flooding, how would you like us to spend our money? So, and interestingly, we get a lot of people in the room together, and we bang their heads together and see, how would they like us to spend that money? And they start off by saying, well, flooding is the worst possible thing you could do to us, and you need to deal with it, whatever the cost. And then they talk a bit, and they go, well, yes, it really is a bad thing to do, but maybe there's some level of risk that we can accept because it's flooding and it's difficult to deal with. So, and actually, maybe the solution that we deliver should be cost-effective and cost-beneficial, and we can't just spend at any cost whatsoever. So you can see the kind of process that our customers work through as they go through this this process. So, and they say, well, we wouldn't mind paying a bit more money if we get a bit higher level of service out of that. That makes sense. That's quite nice. And in particular, when you think about SuDS, well, could we deliver a 1 in 100 year protection instead of the traditional 1 in 20, 1 in 30? Interesting. So they also want us to look at much more kind of working in partnership and learning from other people, which again, with regards to SuDS, is crucial and critical. And from their perspective, SuDS are better than hard engineered solutions. That's a nice thing to come out of a willingness to pay survey. Problem with that is their understanding of SuDS is certainly limited. So what they think of SuDS might be different to what we're thinking of SuDS. So we need to take what's being said there with a bit of a pinch of salt. So there is also a concern amongst our customers that the application of SuDS has limited impact on delivering, particularly with flood risk. And achieving the kind of goals that we want to deal with. So there is some uncertainty there, which I think is fair enough, because this is still very new for a lot of us. So, but interestingly, this last point, and I'll pick up on it again, they don't necessarily feel it's just for the water company to deal with. We ought to again be working in partnership, and as has been discussed already, working together to solve these problems. It's not just one authority's issue. There's more people that should be coming to the table. So all of this information gets fed in to create what our little wheel of outcome. So this is ultimately the way that the industry has gone now. So we've moved away from outputs to outcomes. So outputs was very much about driving a specific, hole in the ground with a sewer in it. There's your output. Thank you very much. So now what we're talking about is delivering outcomes for our customers. And in particular, from a kind of a flood risk perspective, that falls into the satisfied customers at the top there. And I'll touch on in a minute about that. But when you think about SuDS aren't just about flood risk. There's lots of other parts of our outcome wheel where SuDS can fit into that. So whether that be safe, clean water from a pollution perspective, supply meets demand. We're reducing demand on our existing sewer system by retrofitting SuDS. A flourishing environment, caring for our communities. These, as has been mentioned, the amenity benefit of these things. So although the driver for a lot of this has been flood risk, what we're saying, I suppose, when you look at our outcomes, is there's far more benefit there that we can have, and it's about being clever and intelligent about pulling that together. So as I said, we've moved away from this outputs to these outcomes towards some of these more interesting examples. Now, ODIs can be split down into both reputational ODIs and financial ODIs. And the financial ODIs are the ones that have a big impact on the industry, and really ultimately that's how we are incentivized to do stuff. If you do well on your ODI, you get rewarded for it. If you do badly, there's a penalty, and Ofwat take money back off the company. But there are other ODIs which are reputational, so it's about saying to our customers, we want to do this because it's the right thing to be doing. Now, when it comes to our specific ODIs, we have a number around that influence around SuDS. So with regards to sewer flooding in particular, there's two ODIs there, one for internal flooding and one for external flooding. And really the driver there is to reduce the number of properties at risk of from flooding from the sewers. But we also have a third ODI that fits within that satisfied customer element of our outcomes, which is around delivering sustainable solutions. And this is really what I want to talk about a bit more now today. So this is where the kind of SuDS element for us comes in, and is really, I suppose, the focus for a lot of our work going forward is to, I suppose, drive a change within the business, and I'll pick up on that in a second. So now, interestingly, the way that we count our ODIs and the way that we look at that is fed by a number of kind of numbers from how our customers are getting flooded, and for us that is all causes. So it's not just hydraulic overload of the system, but it can include other things such as blockages, pump failures, but it also includes things like severe weather and transferred sewers as well. So really we're counting everything within the kind of context of how a customer might be flooded or influenced by surface, a large amount of surface water. So, and all of that will then affect how we think about the ODIs and how we manage that going forward and what we deliver. So the Sustainable Solutions ODI. So ultimately what we've said to our customers is that of the sewerage capacity schemes that we have within the business and that we will deliver during AMP6, 25% of those schemes will include a sustainable element. Now, I suppose you say sustainable element there, it's not just about SuDS, it's about doing things differently that is in particular about managing the surface water. So, and this kind of hierarchy that we've included there within our sort of business planning is at the bottom, in certain circumstances, the most sustainable thing to do might be the traditional solution, building a big hole and pouring lots of concrete. I'm not saying that's always going to necessarily be the wrong thing to do. You have to do the right thing in the right place. But there are more sustainable things to do than just pouring lots of concrete. So there might be, we said build alternative there. I'll show you an example of that later. So that might be, for example, using crates instead of concrete. Using exceedance routes, making best use of the capacity that we have within our network through intelligent control, all the way up to what we all know as SuDS, so source control and attenuation on the surface and stuff like that. So there's a whole range of skills and elements that we can use to try and help meet this ODI. How we do it, I think there was a recognition when we started talking about this that there's no way we would just hit 25% year on year from the start of the AMP. So we'd have to ramp up through this. So we started slowly last year, and then we'll deliver more and more throughout the AMP in this kind of curved path. So now, before I move on to the next bit, I'd just say a touch about new build SuDS. So the ODI is very much about retrofit SuDS, and that's a big push for us now. But there is still an element here about new build SuDS, and that is separate from our ODI, but we are still very much trying to push this agenda forward. So we've been offering adoption of SuDS since 2010, and we will continue to do that going forward. So, and this all kind of feeds the whole kind of ultimate sort of plan for the business, is that we provide a sustainable approach for our customers, and that whether that be on a new build or on a retrofit situation, we will adopt and build SuDS. So how are we identifying the opportunities that come up through this ODI? So and you might ask, why on earth did we bother even doing an ODI in the first place? Why not just go and do it? Well, ultimately, it's to incentivize us to do something different. And the good thing is, it's working. You can see this, and I've got some colleagues in the room today, and it definitely is working. In the past, it's very easy for us to revert to type and do what we know, which is a more hard engineered solution. So Whereas ultimately what we're doing here is driving change within the business, and we're upskilling the people within the organisation to do something differently and think differently when they come to delivering a scheme. So it's not the only reason though. There are other opportunities when you start to look at this type of approach, and that's around trying to deal with problems that maybe in the past we found too difficult using a traditional solution. And in particular, this might include things like for us in particular, working on external flooding. So through our willingness to pay work, our customers said, we want you to focus on internal flooding, and therefore our business plan didn't include any purely external flooding solutions. There's only stuff that's linked to internal flooding. But by doing something with SuDS and working in partnership with others, we can start to look at where there are other opportunities to do stuff. So it gives us an opportunity to deliver much higher return periods than we have done in the past. All that's clearly to the benefit of our customers. We might be deferring or avoiding future investment. That's definitely a benefit for us. And also it means that we can pick up potentially other drivers. So we've certainly found through, say for example, Section 19 flood investigations, that there's properties that are being identified that are flood risk that are never actually reported to us because they're reported to another authority. So by doing this work and working in partnership, there are clear opportunities there. So in terms of identifying where these schemes are and what is a sewerage capacity scheme, that comes from 5 different business cases within our overall business plan. So don't worry about the numbers in the middle, the numbers focus on the ones at the bottom. So the total number of schemes out of all of those 5 business cases is 200 schemes pretty much. So, and these numbers will have changed throughout the AMP and will develop. So what we're saying ultimately is 50 of those schemes will have an element of sustainability to them. At least 50 of those schemes will. Hopefully we'll deliver more, we'll see. And in order to do that, you'll notice within those 5 schemes, the sewer flooding business case is just one of those. Partnership funding is a big element of this and will have a big impact on the ODI. And in order to do that, we need to work in partnership with others, and the guys have touched on this already. So for us, there's 21 partnerships across the region of all lead local flood authorities, Environment Agency. 3 different regional flood and coastal committees play a big role in this. So they're all bought into this process now of looking at alternative options for delivering surface water management and driving SuDS forward if we can. So, and as part of that, and working with all these people, there are opportunities for funding. As has been again touched on earlier, if we work together, there might be benefits for all parties involved, and if we can work together and partnership fund these things, and it's not just partnership funding us giving money out, it might be money coming into the business as well, then there's real opportunities to do something different. So just to finish now quickly on some current examples that we're working on, and these are very, very high level at the moment, but just give a range of an outline of some of the stuff that we're doing. So I'll start down in South Essex, a place called Grays. Now this is an interesting one. So the properties at risk, these ones in the middle here. Now these properties, interestingly, have been at risk for a long time, and we delivered a solution a couple of AMPs ago to remove them from the flooding register. That solution's failed and isn't working as it should be working, so we're having to re-look at this again. Now the traditional solution to solve the current problem with that is, and the solution we looked at originally was bigger pipes in the road, but through this kind of process and I suppose with the ODI at the back of our engineers' mind, they thought, well, that's probably not the best way to do things now, so why don't we look at doing something a little bit different here. So and this is where the kind of thought on the SuDS starts coming in, particularly when you see a road like that. That is the road in question, and the opportunity there is immense really for what we've got. We've already got traffic calming, so the local authority shouldn't be too afraid of us including traffic calming in any SuDS that we use. We've got wide verges that have potential there. Clearly we need to assess whether there's any issues with services in the verges and stuff like that, but you look at that and you think there's definitely an opportunity to do something there. So, and that's what we'll be looking at now going forward. This scheme we'll be working with Thurrock Council on, and together we're looking at whether there's any opportunities for whether there's any grant and aid or local levy funding that we can use here as well. So this isn't just a sewer flooding problem, there's a surface water and highways drainage issue here as well. So we need to work together to try and solve this problem. Next one is Kettering, Rothwell Road. So this is an interesting one. So this again is a kind of a bit of a chronic flooding problem that we've had for a long time, just around this area here. So running through here is a railway line. If anyone knows, working anywhere near a railway line can always be a little bit tricky. And what we've got here as well is Kettering General Hospital right here. And the area that floods is around this roundabout at the bottom. This is a hill, comes down to this roundabout, and that then impedes any ambulances trying to get to any. So it's a big issue for us, this one. So now, again, what we traditionally we would have looked at oversized pipes here, but actually, again, that's not going to work, particularly with in close proximity to the railway line. So instead, what we've said is, can we take a sustainable approach to this? Now, a sustainable approach in this case is an exceedance route, using an exceedance route. Let the water be on the surface, let the water flood, and then allow it to drain away in a more sort of appropriate way to what we've got down here, which is the brook, the Slade Brook. So a much sort of different solution to what we would have looked at in the past, which would just be to stick a big pipe in and get the water out as quickly as possible. So Norwich in Orchard Close, Orchard Close in Norwich, sorry. Again, lots of potential here for something, and I couldn't resist putting one of these pictures in. Just a bit of inspiration of what 2 minutes. That's fine. I think one more of what we could do. So now, interestingly, this one, you can see it's on the slope, and the properties at the bottom are the ones that flood. Now, in this area, Norfolk Highways are doing a lot of work at the moment on surface water management and retrofit SuDS as well, and we're working very closely with them. And this is in one of their areas where they've got funding to do work and we've got funding to do work. So why on earth wouldn't we work together on this? It just makes sense. So we're talking to them at the moment about the opportunities to do some stuff there. And then finally, just in Lowestoft. So this is one that's quite close to my heart because last summer, 30 or 40 properties are in this area, flooded internally, and a bunch more flooded externally from there's a watercourse that runs all the way down here. Now, the work we're doing is all the way over here on the other side of the catchment over here. Now, where this water drained in the past, it's difficult to see, but the surface water drained to this watercourse here that ended up in this watercourse and would have added to the water being received in the watercourse that caused the flooding over there. And instead now we're taking the water away from that catchment and discharging it to the beach and the North Sea that's just here. We were talking about this just earlier. So, and in this case we are using underground storage crates on the edge of the beach to do that. So, so that's it. I'll take any questions. Go from there. Thank you very much.
As a first question, maybe.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk about partnership funding and alternative benefits and this kind of thing. This might be a stretch too far, but is it possible to incorporate other utilities while we do this, so that rather than digging up the road once, we could actually, or resurfacing the road or whatever it is we're doing, can we actually go in and change the gas main and do the various other things so that you finish your work and then somebody comes along and says, oh, here's this nice swale along this street, I'm going to put my gas main down there and dig it all up and make it look completely different to what you put it in. Do you think there's an opportunity for that, and how do you think that could be delivered?
I certainly think there's an opportunity there. I know that through the process, we will always do those searches and be in contact with those utility organisations, and particularly, I know highway authorities are very reticent to allow the road to be dug up on a constant basis now, so they're trying to align that works wherever possible. So, and I know it's something that we've certainly looked at in, I didn't mention earlier, but in Canvey Island, where we've had a lot of flooding in the past, and a lot of work is required on the island to try and sort that out. And certainly looking at where utilities can work together so that we're not doing constant dig-ups is something that we have considered, certainly. So, you mentioned a good point, though. We don't want to be putting something in that gets dug up and it looks completely different once it gets put back. And I think that's really important about how whatever measure or SuDS feature you put in, retains the look that it was designed to look like, as opposed to being ripped out and then just sort of replaced with a bit of tarmac on top of it. So.
And in the same vein, if you're putting one of those things in, how do you stop people from parking on those things and just destroying everything you've put in the same way? Is that something that is thought about?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of different ways of doing that. The simplest is with some sort of small sort of wooden bollard or something like that to assess that. But one of the things that you ought to be doing before you even get to that point is understanding the parking requirements of the street where you're doing the work in the first place. So some sort of parking survey and discussions with the residents around what their requirements are for parking, whether it's parking on the verge or access to their property. So that's the sort of thing I think you'd hopefully try and understand much better before you get to the delivery phase. And if you do need to provide any protection, then there are ways of doing that.
Sure. Paul?
Got Mike. Jonathan, you said that you've had an approach to adopt SuDS. How many have you actually done? Are any residential developments?
So this is a new build.
Yeah.
So interestingly, it's not big numbers. It's not as big as you would expect, given that we've been offering this for a long time. So we're talking, it's less than 50, but it's not. It's more than one. Put it that way. I don't know the exact numbers, but but yeah, I'm surprised it's not as high as it is. Now, interestingly, although we've agreed to adopt, we haven't necessarily taken them on yet, given the build out rates and the lead in time of the sort of 2-year maintenance period that we'd place on the developer before we actually take it on.
So what are you stipulating before you adopt it? Are you asking them to follow your adoption guidance by the latter, and are you inspecting?
Yeah, both, absolutely. So we'll have teams within our developer services teams that will go out and inspect during construction, and they will have to meet the criteria set out in our adoption guide. So we're planning to update that one. It's a bit out of date now, and just provide a bit more clarity on it. But yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Sue, I think you had your hand up.
Sue Illman, actually to follow up on that, you said you will adopt SuDS. Is that all SuDS or only some of them? And there was a little next line that said challenges exist. So I wondered what those challenges were.
Yeah.
And then carrying on from what you were actually mainly talking about, you've said 25%, which you made clear was by number. How does that relate to value?
Okay. So on the new build stuff first. So we won't adopt everything. So we won't adopt anything that's on private property. That would be for the private homeowner to look after themselves. And there are certain features that we will and won't adopt. That's one of the reasons we're updating our manual to make it much clearer about what we will and won't do. So in terms of the 25% retrofit side of things, so the way that we're counting against the ODI is not necessarily about value, and it's not necessarily the whole scheme doesn't have to be sustainable. There's an element of sustainability in there. So that's one of the things we were grappling with when we were putting the ODI together, was if you've got a £5 million scheme and you put one water butt on it, does that count as sustainable? Probably not, let's be honest. So there is an element of scale in there that we need to take account of, and when we deliver schemes, they then have to be assessed as to whether they would meet the criteria, and they would be assessed on an individual basis on that count. So we need to be realistic. What we've got to have at the back of our mind is, one, what our customers have asked us, but two, if we get audited, what would the auditors think, and are we taking the mick a little bit by saying this is sustainable or not? So that's what we have to review, and we will be reviewing as and when these schemes get delivered. So.
Thank you. One more, maybe?
Richard Callaghan, HR Wallingford. Bearing in mind that the local highways are a dominant element of the impervious surface and the opportunity for doing SuDS, let's say green SuDS, to get away from lining and stuff. I'm just curious about the process about design, because our highways brethren often think in terms of IDF still, because they have such simplistic design rules for gullies and the like. So when it comes to designing these schemes, do you take a lead in this green sort of traffic calming type of solutions, if you do any? How does the process of design work out? You know, as it's partnership between the two organisations?
I think it's probably fair to say that's work in progress at the moment. So I think if you take the Grays example, for example, down in Thurrock, we will be taking a lead on that, but we will work very closely with Highways. We've already had initial discussions with them about that scheme and how we can include some sort of, traffic calming or whatever it might be as part of the scheme. So, I think they're aware they've got a highways drainage issue there at the moment anyway. So it's win-win working together is how we do that, and that is definitely work in progress. So, but another good example of where highways are maybe changing a little bit. So up in Lincolnshire, their road spec they've completely rewritten to now include SuDS. So, and it's not complete yet, but they're in the process of doing it at the moment, and we're heavily involved in that process with them. So when new builds are either built or when they're redesigning roads or retrofitting roads, whatever it might be that they do, SuDS is now a big element of their drainage for them. So now, not all highways authorities are like that, and I mean, better than most, Richard, how different it is across the country. Some are very pro, say, permeable paving, for example, and some won't go anywhere near it. So it's very much a case by case, I think. But I think from our perspective, we would be committed to working with them and just hope that get them on board as best as possible.